Peppa walks through the empty school corridor, her footsteps echoing loudly off the walls. Classrooms gape with dark openings. Desks stand in neat rows without a single student. Strange symbols are written in chalk on the blackboard that Peppa has never seen before. The school clock on the wall ticks too loudly, its hands moving in reverse. Peppa peeks into the teacher's room, but there are only empty cups with steaming tea. Children's drawings on the walls slowly change, the faces on them becoming sad. In the cafeteria, tables are set for lunch, but the food on plates is covered with dust. Peppa hears distant children's laughter, but the corridors remain completely empty. Classroom doors begin to creak, slowly opening and closing by themselves. Wet footprints of small feet appear on the floor, leading nowhere. The school bell suddenly rings, although it's not yet time for class. Peppa finds her desk with a notebook bearing her name lying on it. The notebook contains words she doesn't remember writing. Shadows from window frames fall on the floor in strange patterns resembling faces. Peppa opens her locker and sees her belongings there, but they're covered with cobwebs. The echo of her voice returns, distorted, speaking words she didn't say. In the gym, empty swings sway, making a quiet creaking sound. Peppa approaches the window and sees an empty schoolyard without a single child. Suddenly, all sounds stop. Absolute silence falls, pressing on her ears. Peppa turns toward the exit, but the school door slowly closes by itself. A new, unusually quiet windmill appeared in Peppa Pig's garden. It was a gift from Daddy Pig, initially bringing novelty and calm. Its blades rotated slowly, emitting a barely audible, lulling hum. Peppa and George were delighted. Mummy Pig found it peaceful. No one could have imagined this harmless object would become the source of something deeply unsettling. Mummy Pig began spending more time near the windmill. She listened to its monotonous hum, claiming to hear whispers, then instructions. Her speech became fragmented. She forgot daily chores, her gaze often distant, as if seeing something no one else could. George, mesmerized by the spinning blades, watched them for hours. He grew unnaturally quiet, his eyes wide and glassy. He started mimicking the windmill's slow, rhythmic motion, as if guided by an invisible force. Peppa was the first to notice the growing unease. She tried speaking with Mummy Pig and George, but their replies were hollow, often just repeated phrases that seemed to echo the windmill's hum. She felt increasingly isolated, surrounded by her family but unable to reach them. Daddy Pig dismissed her concerns at first, blaming fatigue or new interests. He tried to keep normal routines, but their detachment became too obvious and disturbing to ignore. Then a new neighbor arrived, Puss in Boots, styled like a Peppa Pig character. Curious and adventurous, he was immediately drawn to the windmill, but unlike the pig family, he sensed its sinister presence. He tried to engage with them, but their altered behavior made it nearly impossible. The windmill's influence deepened. Its hum filled every room. The family's movements aligned with its rhythm. They began seeing strange patterns in everyday objects, interpreting them as part of the windmill's truth. One night, Peppa, lying on the top bunk, noticed George was awake below. His eyes reflected a faint, pulsing light from the windmill outside. He whispered the same phrases Mummy Pig had repeated earlier. His voice was calm, flat, stripped of childlike emotion. Horror gripped Peppa. George was no longer himself. Daddy Pig finally realized the depth of the change. He tried to dismantle the windmill to break its hold, but Mummy Pig and George stood silently in his way. They didn't resist physically, but their stillness, their empty expressions, made him hesitate. One by one, the family was absorbed into the windmill's reality. They didn't vanish, but their minds were gone, taken. What remained were empty vessels, moving by the distorted logic of the windmill's hum. There was no violence, just quiet, complete assimilation. Seizing a moment when Puss in Boots distracted them, Peppa ran. She turned back to see her family, vacant-eyed, moving in sync with the windmill. The house itself seemed to vibrate with its hum. Peppa finds a strange TV in Grandpa's attic. The screen flickers with greenish light. A girl with short hair appears on screen, smiling far too widely. "Hello, I'm Dora. Want to play explorers with me?" The voice sounds distorted. Peppa touches the screen and the room around begins dissolving into colored pixels. She finds herself in a jungle, but trees here are purple, sky poisonously green. Dora stands nearby, but her eyes are now completely black, without pupils. "We need to find the exit, Peppa. But first, answer my question correctly." Boots the monkey hangs from a branch, his mouth open in silent scream. "Where is home?" "Say it quickly or stay here forever," Dora whispers. Peppa tries to answer, but words stick in throat. Air becomes thick. The map in Dora's hands begins bleeding. Red drops fall to ground. Swiper the fox emerges from bushes but has too many teeth in mouth. "Wrong answer, Peppa." "Now you're part of our world forever," Dora laughs. Trees begin moving closer, their branches reaching for the frightened pig. Dora's backpack opens itself, children's voices calling for help from inside. Peppa runs down the path, but it leads nowhere, only into endless darkness. "You can't escape from exploring, Peppa." Dora's voice echoes around. The sky begins falling in pieces like broken glass, revealing black void. Peppa closes her eyes and screams, wishing to return home to family. When she opens eyes, she sits before turned-off TV, trembling with fear. The lost episode of Peppa Pig that never aired. A sunny day illuminated Peppa Pig's house, filling it with familiar laughter. Peppa and George played in their room, where a bunk bed stood against the wall, George on the bottom, Peppa on top. Mummy Pig cooked in the kitchen, and Daddy Pig read the newspaper in the living room. Everything was as usual, but a slight, barely perceptible tension hung in the air. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door, and Daddy Pig went to open it. Dr. Octopus stood on the threshold, his tentacles ominously writhing. His gaze was unusually empty, and his movements stiff. He didn't smile as he always did. Dr. Octopus entered, his steps heavy and slow. He surveyed the room, his eyes resting on Peppa and George. The children felt a chill run down their spines. Mummy Pig tried to speak to Dr. Octopus, but he only made a strange guttural sound. His tentacles began to move faster, casting an eerie shadow on the wall. Peppa and George hid under the bed, their hearts pounding. They heard strange sounds from the living room, sounds that shouldn't have been in their house. Daddy Pig tried to protect his family, but Dr. Octopus was too strong. His tentacles grabbed Daddy Pig and he vanished into the darkness. Mummy Pig screamed, her voice full of terror. She tried to run, but Dr. Octopus was faster. She too disappeared, leaving the children alone. Peppa and George trembled with fear, huddled together. They heard footsteps approaching their room. The door slowly opened, and a silhouette appeared in the doorway. It was Dr. Octopus, but now he looked different. His tentacles were longer, and his eyes glowed with an ominous red light. He extended his hand towards them. Peppa and George closed their eyes, awaiting their fate, but instead they felt a gentle touch. Dr. Octopus simply stroked their heads, his gaze full of sadness. Dr. Octopus slowly turned and left the room, leaving the children in silence. They didn't know what had happened, but they knew their lives would never be the same.